another episode of the Inner Edison Podcast. I'm your host, Ed Parcaut, and today I welcome Gary Arndt. He's a world traveler, award-winning photographer, and host of Everything Everywhere Daily Podcast. You're going to hear how Gary's journey from early internet entrepreneur to global explorer, his pivot into podcasting, and learn how he built a massive audience with daily, bite-sized stories from history and beyond. Get inspired by Gary's lessons on curiosity, resilience, and building a thriving podcast from scratch. Gary Arndt, thank you so much for coming on the Inner Edison Podcast. I appreciate you being here today.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. All right. So I don't know how far back we want to go, but since we've been talking about your podcast before we get started, let's start there. So you sold a business in 2007-ish, and you started traveling the world for a while, and then you got, I'll let you tell the stories, and then how you got into the podcasting.
Well, I had an early internet company that I started in like 1994, sold that in 1998.
Hold on, back up. So 1994 is a definitely really early internet company.
Very early. I was at the right place at the right time. I had a college roommate that I talked to after college. He said, "Oh man, you should check out this World Wide Web thing." And he was developing a product that let you, this is very early on, so it's very different environment.
You're talking to the person who knows exactly what you're talking about. All right.
So this was back like before, when you needed Perl scripts, and I think it was before PHP. It was before MySQL. So you needed it was really expensive to do very simple things. Yeah. You know what Cold Fusion is?
Yeah, I totally know what Cold Fusion.
Yeah, so I was the world's first Cold Fusion developer.
Yeah, because that's what we all were learning, how to do websites and everything back in the day. So I'm from that era. All right, I was in the Navy during that period of time, and I just gotten out, and I was doing a bunch of stuff, and I was selling computers through a computer company who would customize them, which they didn't do back then, and it was a totally different world than we live in today. Fast forward where we are now, and I tell people what we can do today, people were waiting for back then to be able to do with what we could do today. There's just so much opportunity with what we can do today. I can talk to somebody in Australia, which I did yesterday, and do a podcast with them, where before that would have been a phone call.
Yeah. My college roommate was JJ Allaire, who wrote Cold Fusion. Wow. And we were living together, and he was writing the initial product. And after it was released, companies came to him and they said, "Oh, we'd like to have our company's website run on this." He didn't actually want to build the websites. So he just said, "Do you want to do this?" So I was like, "Sure." And I hired a friend who had a friend. And next thing you know, I'm 28. I have 50 people working for me. I sell the business. And it was before the dot-com bubble burst. And I started another business. That did happen when the dot-com bubble burst. Went back to school for a bit, realized
hold on, Gary, for people who don't know the dot-com burst, there were so many companies who came out of the area of just throwing money at it, kind of like Amazon when they weren't making any money, and there were so many companies coming out of there, and they had a huge burst. Because there could be younger people, I have no idea. I do a fire walk, and I was telling somebody the other day, you know who Tony Robbins is? And I go, "Who's Tony Robbins?" And, so everybody's different. Not everybody knows what we're talking about.
And the funny thing is back then, I think everybody knew it was a bubble. Because I remember having these discussions with people. It's like these prices that companies were getting, and they were just ridiculous. Some of the companies, it was like anything plus internet would get funded, even if it didn't make any sense. But I sold that business, went back to school, realized I didn't want to do anything in academia. I studied geology and geophysics for a while. And then I came up with this idea of selling my house to travel around the world. I had no wife, no kids. There was nothing stopping me. And in 2007, I sold my house and set out to travel around the world for a year or two. And that turned into over a decade. I had a popular travel blog. I taught myself photography, became pretty good at it. Won pretty much every major travel photography award there was to win, and was on the road pretty much either full time or the vast majority of the time for 13 years.
Wow. And that was all over the world. So you never came back to the United States during that period of time?
No, I did. I even did trips in the United States. Okay. My car, I just gave it to my parents. They parked it in the garage, and I took that on some really big road trips. Drove from Wisconsin to Newfoundland. did a big trip out west, did a big loop going through provinces in Canada, all the way down to San Diego, Texas, Tennessee, and back. So I did several of those. But
did you camp during this period of time? Did you live out of your car during this period of time? When you were driving your car?
Yeah. But just a lot of motels and stuff. Was just easier that way.
Right. And what did you learn along the way of that? Did you learn anything?
A lot.
Because you don't go out expecting, you just, let's just go. And what?
That was kind of the biggest reason I did it. I mean, I've always been curious. I always loved learning, and travel was kind of, I've always described it as the world's biggest school. And when you're on the road, you're always going to be learning stuff. But when the pandemic hit, and I actually made it a business where I was doing photography at a popular travel website, big followings on social media, and that all came to a screeching halt when the pandemic hit. I came back from my last international trip, February 28th, 2020. March 1st, I get COVID. Probably picked it up at the airport coming back from Portugal. Was sick for like a week. And this was before there was a whole lot of stuff for it. Like there wasn't even testing or anything available. And after that, in the middle of March, everything in travel and tourism just shut down. Like it just went to nothing. And I thought it would be back within like a month or two, like April, May, things would be back to normal. And that wasn't the case. And I eventually realized I needed to do something that wasn't reliant on travel and tourism. And one of the problems always was that people only cared about that stuff when they're about to go on a trip. It's not like you follow it like you do news, technology, sports, all that stuff. There's something going on all the time. So I did a big pivot, and I took a lot of what I learned, but I didn't make it a travel show. I turned it into a history podcast. And rather than doing, longer episodes, maybe once or twice or once every other week, I decided to do a daily show where I'm basically writing a 2,000 word script every day. And that's the show. And the topics are about anything and everything. That's literally the name of the show, Everything Everywhere. And it a lot of it comes from things I encountered and learned while traveling. And a lot of it's just stuff that I've picked up along the way with a whole host of topics. And I literally it's not just history, but I'll cover math, economics, geography, science, you name it.
Yeah, I saw in there before we got started, I was talking about the number stations, because people don't understand what number stations are and what they were.
Number stations. So I used to have a shortwave radio, and I'd listen to it. This is like in the mid 90s when I was just starting my company. And I'd listen to it, and you'd turn the dial, and there's a lot of crazy stuff on shortwave. And I remember hearing these stations every so often where it was just a voice reading numbers. 1, 4, 7, 3, 2, and they would repeat it over and over. And I didn't know what it was. And it sounded really eerie because it made no sense. And I remember I was thinking of episode ideas. I was like, what's that? And so I looked into it, and, these stations have been documented. They have a pretty good idea of what they are. They're basically used by intelligence agencies, and it's a way to communicate with people in the field, because even if you know where it's broadcasting from, that doesn't really matter. You're trying to protect where people are receiving it from. And to the extent that anybody can receive it, but it's encoded, doesn't really matter. You just need to have your person pick it up, and they can also send information back the same way.
Right. It's kind of hard to track a radio.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, phone's easy to track to a certain point, but I'm just saying that way back then, that was the best way to do it. Now, but nobody has said that they're ours or whose they were really.
No one ever admits to it, but like radio enthusiasts and ham radio operators have been able to pretty much track down, and both sides have done it. There were some British stations that were found, and some Soviet stations, and the Americans did it too. But nobody ever really comes out and says that's ours, because for national security purposes.
Right. I mean, because it could be a good way for the drug cartels and other places to get information to their people if they wanted to. I'm just saying anybody could use a number station and make it up.
But I think they've gone out of favor simply because the internet has made everything, of course, a lot easier. You could have an encrypted message, and there's just so many more options now.
Right. But I mean, if you're trying to be in the middle of nowhere without power or something else. It would not.
Yeah, as long as you have a radio, you could get instructions.
Because a lot of those people who do some of that stuff is in the middle of nowhere. So, all right. So you write one. So I interviewed a guy a while back, and he was saying that if you're going to start a podcast, especially today, do a daily podcast because not everybody's doing them. And one, you can become, where people want to listen to you more because you are a daily podcast and not a long one, but a shorter one, kind of like what you're doing.
Yeah. There's a lot I didn't realize when I started it that it turned out had a lot of benefits. You get a lot of reps in very quick. So if you look at what makes a successful podcast, the obvious quality element, but then there's time and then there's the number of episodes. And the fastest way to get to a large number of episodes is just to do them frequently. And I've certainly found that to be true. And also shorter content seems to be consumed a lot easier by people. That if you have something that's 15 minutes long, they can easily do it in a commute or dropping their kids off to school or some digestible amount of time, where if it's a 3-hour interview with someone, that's very hard to do.
Yeah, I can never with Joe Rogan. I can't do that. I try, but it's just too long. You know what I mean? It's just,
yeah.
And that's why I even max this at 30. But on my daily, I do a daily real estate one, and it's maybe 14, 15 minutes max.
And I think that's all it has to be. I don't think you need to go in depth on a lot of topics. It's kind of, here's the basics and you can get something from it. And especially if you're doing something that's more news related, my stuff's very evergreen. I'll even do reruns, if I want to take a day off. But those shorter episodes, just give people what they need to know and then move on, can be very effective.
So how do you pick your episodes per day? I mean, I know you say it's from what you went through, but you have to have some type. You don't just daily go, that's what I'm going to talk about today.
Well, sometimes I literally do that. I don't like doing that because sometimes figuring out what I'm going to do is the hardest thing to do. But I keep it. So when I started the show, the first thing I did is I sat down and I wrote out 100 ideas for episodes. And I just did it in a Google Doc. And I've kept that same doc and I've been editing it for 5 years. And now it's up to about 938 ideas. So when I want to think of something to do, I can take it from the list, but I also just come across ideas all the time. It's like, that'd be a really good idea for a show. And I just do it.
And how are your followers and over a 5-year period now?
The show's had about 45 million downloads. We get about 1.5 million a month.
Wow.
And again, because it's a daily show, there are certain people that just become really fanatical about listening. And we have this thing called the Completionist Club for people that have listened to every episode. And I'm up to episode number, tomorrow's will be 1,760.
Wow. And for people who want to get into podcasting, I assume you're monetizing this.
Oh, yeah. It took a while to get to that point, but once it did, it ramped up very quick, and now it's my livelihood.
And that's good. And is it good livelihood?
Now it is very good. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I interviewed a guy right after the pandemic, and he was going to trade shows trying to get people to do podcasts. And everybody's like, no, I don't want to do a podcast. That's horrible. And he had this whole idea. And then afterwards, when the pandemic hit, they called him up and says, we want to do this now. And now he does 60 different podcasts a month. That he, not just in individual, I'm talking different podcasts that he oversees and handles and does stuff different for trades and other things. That's how he monetizes his.
Yeah, there's lots of different ways to do it. But being a host and being the owner, and if you can get the show big enough, it scales real well, because unlike most jobs, it's not reliant on the number of hours you work or a promotion or anything. It just scales with the audience. So the amount of work I do to reach, to do 1.5 million downloads a month is not much different than I was doing the same thing when it was 5,000 downloads a month.
What was the big jump from 5,000 to where you got to your 1 million?
Nothing happened overnight. It just kind of has kept growing through word of mouth. Because I get a lot of people that's like, I'm that guy at the office now. I keep telling everyone about this podcast I listen to, and whatever facts I hear on today's show. And that's kind of been how it's spreading.
Well, and please don't take me wrong, but it's unusual that the way that your podcast is and the subject that it is, that is, people think it has to be some type of crime subject or something different, where you have something where it's history, education, basically.
I felt like I was one of the few people that could do a show like this. And of the people that could, I'm probably one of the very few who would. There's so many true crime podcasts now.
Right.
And there's so many, I thought about doing an interview show, but there's a lot of interview shows. And this was a market that I felt I could tackle and not have a lot of competition, especially with the daily show, because daily shows are very difficult. And if you look at other large podcast networks, I know the Discovery Channel has a show they call daily, but it's really just 3 times a week. And it requires a staff of 4 people to produce it. And they all live in New York. So the production costs of that are like way more than some dude in Wisconsin who records it out of a spare bedroom.
And now you record, you edit, you do it everything, or do you have somebody else who does that for you now?
I do everything.
And so now question would be, do you pre-record any of them, or do you all record them all the same day? Well, I mean, do you batch record, or
No.
Okay.
The recording is the easiest part of what I do. The most difficult part is the writing and the research. That's what takes all the time. The actual recording, I can record, 15 minutes of content in 30 minutes roughly. Because it's a solo scripted show, that is the easiest kind of show to produce. There's very little in the way of editing or anything else that, whereas when you're doing an interview show, like what we're doing right now, I'm at a different location. There could be an internet problem. There's ums and ahs. There could be a disruption or whatever. Really not the case if you're just talking into a microphone by yourself.
No, it just editing out if you made a mistake on what you're reading.
Yeah, what I do is I record, and if I make a mistake, I just go back and I start at that point again. And I just keep doing that until I reach the end. And when I'm at the end, it's a finished edited product.
It sounds like what my producer does for us on a radio show that I do. That he as we're recording, he's editing everything on the fly live. So, and that makes it easier for him to do stuff. I'm sorry, I have a gardener outside of here making noise. You might not be able to hear it, but I can. But that's what we were talking about, editing certain things. You said ums and ahs. I don't edit out those anymore.
I think it depends on the show. I think some people try to do a high end, like NPR type thing where it's polished and there's background music and, they're doing interviews. Whereas a lot more shows are just doing this where it's more free formed and you don't really do any major editing unless there's something serious that comes up. Like there's literally the connection drops or something like that.
Or your camera stops.
Yeah.
If you're doing video. Yeah, because I've had that where if certain cameras will overheat, depending on how many hours you're using them. And I've had it where I'm recording and all of a sudden my camera drops. And that's very unusual, but it has happened in the past. But I still think that your idea of doing it daily is a great idea. Because from what we started our daily show 2 years ago, and it's easy to get in the top 1% of daily shows, but it's difficult. I don't want to say difficult, but it takes a while to actually monetize it because you need the downloads.
Yeah, you're not going to really get a lot of offers for ads until you're getting at least like 10,000 downloads an episode. You can do less than that on a daily show because you're compensating for it by the number of episodes. But then you're still looking at 125,000 downloads a month, maybe, to get started.
And so for people to understand, what do you make off of downloads?
That depends how many ads you're running. So my show has exactly 2 ads, no more, no less. Ads are bought on a CPM basis, which is cost per 1,000. So per unit of 1,000 listens, you're going to get, I don't know, I think the industry average right now is about $20. And that could go up or down from there quite a bit. So there's quite a bit of variation, depending on who you're selling it to, your audience, etc. So yeah, it just keeps scaling with your audience once you get to a certain point, which is the beauty of it.
So as you said 1.5 million downloads a month.
Yeah.
So at 1.5 million downloads a month. So the higher you get for downloads. So if it's 10,000 or 20,000, but once you get to 1 million, do they pay more for cost per 1,000, or is it just
not usually?
Do you mind going here? I'm sorry if you don't.
No, I have no problem with it. They're not necessarily going to pay more. You're just doing more. So
but sometimes people go, okay, well, this has 1 million, 1.5 million downloads a month. That's a good number. We might want to, pay more. So we're in that episode.
Well, the ads are put in dynamically, which means that every person may hear different ads. And if you listen to the same episode 6 months from now, you're going to hear different ads. So because it's dynamic, they're not necessarily. I do a thing where you can sponsor like one episode and you get a baked in ad. But for the most part, you're just buying the downloads. That's kind of how it works.
And so the dynamic, is that through whoever you're hosting your podcast through? Do they?
Yeah. So my host is Megaphone, and they just have a system on the back end that dynamically puts in the ads. So you have a bucket of this number of impressions that somebody is buying, and that will then be distributed through these downloads over a period of time.
And how did you come across them? Because there's so many different companies out there.
Oh, I have a ad network that I work with, and they handle all my advertising. So I just focus on the content of the show. That's the one thing I don't do.
No, on the Megaphone, because that's who you go through, right?
Oh, Megaphone is just a host. It's Spotify's, they own it. And you have to apply because they only handle pretty big shows.
Well, I mean, so once you got in there, then the ad place that how long did it take you to get to?
No, they have really two different things. The networks out there, they all approached me, and I went with one called Megaphone, and I'm sorry, Glassbox. And so they do the sales for me. And then all of the shows they work with are hosted on Megaphone just because they can use that system.
Gotcha. No, I was trying to find out how you got to that point. So when you at what point did they come to you? Is what I'm trying to get at.
Oh, I was probably a little under 1 million downloads a month at that point.
So pretty close to that though.
Yeah.
And then, so at that point, when you were first doing it, where did you host it at and how did you handle it different?
Libsyn.
Okay.
But I was with another network before them for 1 year, and I moved to Megaphone when I did that, just because they have a better back end system for inserting ads. But once you just get big enough, all of these networks are on the lookout for shows that have reached a certain level, and I've had everyone in the business contact me at one point or another.
Really? And what's next for you? I mean, how many downloads a month do you want to get to?
More.
I know, but
I mean, I think the show could grow tenfold. Actually, I'm still just an indie guy. I don't have a staff. I don't have anybody doing a lot of this for me. I could probably start hiring some more people. I could probably launch a YouTube channel surrounding it.
So you don't have a YouTube channel from it?
No,
just
audio.
Audio only.
Yeah. I mean, I could take there's a lot of educational YouTube channels out there that are just B-roll footage with voiceover. I already have the voiceover. So it would be very trivial to just hire someone to put it together as a video and then put it out there. There'd be a bit more to it than that, but that can certainly be done. Growing the audio aspect of the show. I'm not selling any merchandise yet. I'm not doing a subscriber option where people can get an ad-free version of the show. So there's a lot low-hanging fruit that I can still do. I'm probably just going to need help doing it because, like I said, it's writing a 2,000-word script every day about the Roman Empire is... And
you're not using ChatGPT then, I take it.
I actually use ChatGPT to do artwork for the cover art for every episode. Yeah. And not every episode, but I'll use it frequently because there's a lot of things in history that there's just no images for.
And the most recent version of ChatGPT that just came out makes this so much better than before.
Well, the number station thing, like you said, the image, that was a rerun of a show I did last year, and it's night and day. If you look at the cover art that I did for the original one and the rerun is so much better.
Yeah, because in the last 2 weeks is the change.
Yeah.
I did a thing I did for a website for my Helping the Brave, and it was a veteran-led logo kind of thing I was trying to create. And I created it 2 weeks ago, and it was like, it's horrible. And then the other day I was like, I got the thing, a notification that they'd updated it, tried it out. Night and day. I mean, huge difference. It is so much better. Even if you're trying, it will create flyers now for you. It created a flyer for my firewalk we're doing this weekend. Even though we had it already created, I just wanted to see. The only thing that was different is the pictures of the people were wrong who are speaking. It just grabbed some pictures from out there and put their faces. So it's easy to edit that, but it's just how nice and clean the stuff is.
Yeah, it's come a long way. I mean, it used to have a very difficult time with words. Like it couldn't spell anything right.
Yeah.
But yeah, it seems to have solved that. It doesn't put 6 fingers on people anymore.
Yeah, I was doing a firewalk thing. I was like, okay, I want to create a t-shirt for it, and had some people walking down it. And of course it had to put a rifle in the guy's hand. I'm like, that's not what I was looking for, but thank you. And that was a month ago. Today it wouldn't do that.
There was a guy that did a test with it, and he tried to create this was a few months ago. ChatGPT could not create an image of a wine glass that was full. It could only do an image that was half full.
Oh, really?
Because all of the images that it had to learn from, nobody fills up a wine glass all the way, right? So every image that it had was like a half full glass. It couldn't do a full glass because it had nothing to base it on. Now it can do it real easy, and it gets the difference between half and full. But yeah, it couldn't do something as simple as that before.
I mean, I just had to create a PowerPoint presentation for me. That's what took me a little bit longer to pop in here. That's what I was doing when I said, hold on a second. Because I needed it for my Rotary tomorrow, and I don't have time to create it. I'm like, I wonder if it could actually create everything I needed, and it did.
Oh, I never even thought of doing that.
I mean, it's like someone else told me that they dropped in their PowerPoint and they edited it. I've created logos for all my different things that I'm doing recently, and beautiful, amazing logos that I could never have had somebody else create. I just feel sorry for all the copywriters and other people that it's going to put out of business.
Yeah, well, or sure the blacksmiths and the furriers felt the same way.
I think so. And then, all the smelting plants that went away in Philadelphia and everything. Gary, thanks for being on the show today. Name of your podcast again so people can find it?
Everything, Everywhere, Daily, and you can listen to it wherever you're listening to this.
And Gary, again, thanks for coming on the show today and sharing your knowledge, and especially the part about letting people know how they can monetize, because I don't think people realize, most people think that it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take time, and you have to keep doing it. But like you said, the daily show, you get there much faster. So thank you for sharing that with us. Thanks for joining us here on the Inner Edison Podcast. I want to thank Gary Arndt for sharing his journey from early internet entrepreneur to award-winning travel photographer and the host of Everything Everywhere Daily Podcast. If you're inspired to start your own podcast or just love learning something new every day, be sure to check out Gary's show. Until next time, keep exploring and stay curious.